In an interview with LifeSite News on the John Henry Weston Show, Athanasius Schneider returns to speaking as prophets speak in times of confusion, without calculation, without curial language, without protections. His words came immediately after the Consistory convened by Pope Leo XIV, an event expected to be decisive on the liturgical front, but which instead avoided the topic, once again taking refuge in mission and synodality. And it is precisely this silence, more than the official declarations, that forms the backdrop to the bishop's words. Schneider doesn't enter cautiously, he enters with corrections. When he hears the Second Vatican Council described as the Church's guiding star, he interrupts the dominant narrative and shifts the axis with a phrase that sounds like a fracture. The guiding star isn't a council, it's Jesus Christ. This isn't a theological clarification, it's a statement of position. Christ is not a point of reference among others, but the sole real center. Everything that doesn't start from there, he warns, ends up spinning in vain. From this point on, the interview becomes something more than an ecclesiastical commentary. It becomes a diagnosis. Schneider speaks of a church that has slowly stopped looking upward and begun to observe itself. A church that debates, organizes, and restructures, but risks losing its heart. And that heart, she insists, is not a process, not a method, not a reform. It is Christ, present and adored. The passage on the Second Vatican Council is among the most delicate and, precisely for this reason, among the most cutting. Schneider doesn't reject it, but he rejects its transformation into ideology. He openly states that ambiguous formulations exist in the conciliar texts and that denying this is intellectually dishonest. Remember that the Council itself defined itself as pastoral, that it did not proclaim new dogmas, that it did not intend to definitively settle doctrinal questions, yet he observes it was elevated to an absolute criterion, separated from other councils, used as a crowbar to justify changes that had nothing to do with the received tradition. Here emerges one of the most powerful images of the interview. The Church is not the sun, it is the moon. It doesn't generate light, it reflects it. When it forgets this, when it begins to behave as if it were itself the source of truth, it enters into a dynamic of self-exaltation that the Church Fathers would never have accepted. It is an ancient language, deliberately ancient, which contrasts with contemporary rhetoric, but which is precisely why it is striking. It is on this basis that Schneider approaches synodality, not with a technical analysis, but with a clear judgment. He describes it as a turning around ourselves, a structure that risks transforming ecclesial life into a sort of permanent parliament, made up of roundtables, consultations, and endless discussions. A model that, according to him, does not arise from the Catholic tradition, but from the Protestant one, and which produces the same fruits: confusion, relativism, adaptation to the spirit of the world. The criticism becomes even more radical when it links synodality to evangelization. How can Christ be proclaimed, it asks, if there is no longer a faith expressed with a single voice? How can one speak to the world if, within the Church, bishops and cardinals teach opposing views on the same fundamental issues? Doctrinal confusion, he states, is the true silent scandal of our time. From here, inevitably, the discussion shifts to liturgy, not as an aesthetic or disciplinary issue, but as an ontological one. Liturgy, for Schneider, is the Church's primary task because man is created to worship God. When the Mass ceases to be clearly oriented toward God and becomes centered on the assembly, on dialogue, on self-referentiality, something breaks. It is here that he utters one of the harshest sentences. Synodality, thus understood, is a poor, economic, ecclesial life with a low spiritual cost. The judgment on the Novus Ordo is direct, without extenuating circumstances. As it stands, it cannot continue. Not because traditionalists demand it, but because, he maintains, it corresponds neither to what the Council truly envisioned, nor to the liturgical tradition of the Church. He reconstructs the Mass of 1965, celebrated by the Council Fathers themselves, as an example of organic, seamless reform. A Mass that almost no one remembers today, but which for Schneider represents the true implementation of the Council. The traditional Mass, on the contrary, is defended not as a banner of identity, but as a millenary rite that precedes Trent, and that cannot be treated as a remnant of the past. The proposal is clear: not to change the traditional Mass, but to gradually reform the Novus Ordo until it returns to the received form, leaving only minor differences, such as the broader use of the vernacular. When he delves into details, the tone becomes even more prophetic. The Ad Orientem celebration is indicated as an essential reform because it breaks the anthropocentric circle and restores the Mass to its natural direction. Communion on the knees and on the tongue is defined as a matter of spiritual survival. The current practice is described as an open wound, a source of profanation and a loss of the sense of the sacred. Even more explosive is the passage on women in the presbytery. Schneider speaks openly of a logical shift that leads from female liturgical service to a questioning of the male priesthood. She doesn't use diplomatic tones. She says that a truly Catholic woman shouldn't desire the altar, and she invokes the Virgin Mary as a model, not a visible protagonist, but the hidden heart of the Church. This is followed by criticism of modern liturgical music, which is defined as worldly, Protestant, and unsuitable for Catholic worship, and a call for a decisive return to Latin as the universal language of the Church, at least in symbolic places and in religious life. The interview concludes with a direct appeal to the Pope, a clear profession of faith regarding the errors of our time, and a true liturgical peace founded on the full recognition of the traditional liturgy, not as a concession, but as an act of justice. It's not a reassuring interview. It doesn't seek consensus. It doesn't offer easy solutions. But precisely for this reason, it's making waves. Because in an age when the Church often speaks in circles, Athanasius Schneider returns to speaking in a straight line, upward. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.